I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creek Devil. We have Jarrett with us today. Jarrett, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How about you?
I'm good. And David's with us. Well, I'm just going to hand you the microphone and tell us what happened.
Well, we had a family cabin that was up in over close to Mercer, Wisconsin, and that's mostly where all this stuff happened. But a lot of the hold on, let me get it once again. A lot of what was going on up there was just little tiny stuff. It wasn't a lot of big stuff. There was only what my mom thinks could have been potentially a face-to-face sighting, and I'll let you be the one to really say if it was or not. But so basically, we had this cabin. We got it back in 2016. Really nice, secluded place out there. It's a lakeside property, tinier cabin, and I'd say this all happened within probably a span of from 2016 to I got into the Army, because that's when we got rid of it. I think September 21. So on math counts, that's about 5-6 years, right? Something like that. But that's basically where all this stemmed from. And well, there would be nights where we'd be having campfires and we'd be sitting around the campfire, and this actually happened the first year we were out there. Now that I remember it, this is actually what my mom was telling me how she started noticing stuff. It was weird. She said at first it felt like there was but it sounded like there was a really big deer walking through the forest, and I was like, well, what do you mean? Because at first I didn't hear it. I don't know, I was probably like 15, 16 at the time that this happened. I was like, oh, I don't care what that is. I'm more worried about the fire and the marshmallows going on over at the fire, right? Who cares about the deer out there? But she was talking about the deer, and now that I remember her talking about it, I did hear something shuffling out there. It was, you saw the fire ring, well, didn't you? I think I showed you what it was. It was pretty close to the tree line and all. I mean, you got the outhouse right there too, so, but, so that was one of the instances that happened, and it was kind of creepy, and it creeped my mom, my aunt, and me out a little bit after I started kind of noticing what was going on. So we just packed up and went in for the night, that night at least. The other one that happened was, I'm trying not to go all over the place. God, there's so much, well, not really so much, but there's enough that I'm just trying not to get it all jumbled up. Was the sighting, and this is where she also cleared it up. There was, I guess, 2 instances that happened with our dog, and our dog was a pretty decent sized German Shepherd. He was about 180 pounds when he was in his prime, and that was nothing but muscle. He's a big boy, and if anything would have came into that his little section of property, he would have let us know. He was a pretty loud boy. And I guess one night she said it sounded like something was walking in that same area over by the fire pit, and he kind of looked over there, but he didn't want nothing to do with it. And he came down them stairs that we have off the front porch that we had, and he didn't really go into his area to go potty. And we had that over by that fireplace is where he would go potty. And this happened probably about 5-6 in the morning, because that's usually when he likes to go, to the restroom. And he went down the stairs, and he like I said, he looked, and he just kind of sat there and he did his business there. And then he kind of looked at my mom and was like, yeah, let's go inside. I don't want to be here no more. Basically, he was acting weird. to her, and she thought that was strange because he would always, it didn't matter. He would go out there if something else was out there, but I don't know, whatever it was that was out there really scared him. And the second night, or not that second night, but like this happened probably that happened in the summer of the same instance with the possible sighting. And she said that it was just really strange, like really strange weather for that like type of day. It was she said it was kind of like a foggy kind of mist, and it was that gray in the morning, if you know what I'm saying. Is like it was that like weird twilight hours where it's like stand to basically is what I'm trying to get to. So it's like it's just dark enough where you can kind of see, but it's just light enough where it's not super bright, if that makes sense. And she came off the porch, let him go use the restroom, and it was, I think I had said, what time was it? I think it was about 6, 7 in the morning, maybe earlier than that. I think it was like 4 or 5. I can't remember what I had said. But, yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Whenever the dog would behave like that, would it do it like several days in a row or just every now and then? Did y'all notice any patterns with it?
No, so we didn't really let him go out too much, if that makes sense. He was more of an inside dog. But no, we never really tried to let him go out because, I mean, all the wild critters and stuff that are out there, we didn't want him getting roughed up with any of them. We didn't notice anything like that. No, it was just he would look in like that certain direction of wherever she could have heard where it was coming from, and then he would just like look at it and be like, yeah, whatever this is, I don't want nothing to do with it. Just get me inside.
Gotcha.
Kind of a ordeal, not really not really a pattern, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess you could say it's more of a pattern. He just wanted to go use the restroom and get out, so, or go back inside. So, but, no, this possible sighting was probably about 4 or 5 in the morning, and she could hear, I think it was in the fall. Yeah, it was in the fall because I think grouse season's more or less in the fall up there. Well, I mean, most hunting season is anyway. But she could hear gunshots way off in the distance, and she thinks this is possibly what led up to the sighting because we hadn't seen nothing. We only had ever heard of stuff. Maybe occasionally we'd hear something that we couldn't really identify, like maybe birds or something like that, or like something maybe mimicking a bird, but it's not like I only knew a little bit of Bigfoot by Monster Quest. So it's not like I could really identify a lot about what was going on with Bigfoot, and only having really limited knowledge at it at this time a little bit, what really didn't help me out much. But she said that the gunshots she think maybe might have lured this thing into our property or whatever for shelter or whatever. I don't know. That's what she was saying. And what scared her the most, though, out of this was it was kind of in the so when you come off the porch, you're looking over at the tree line where the dog would always look, and off to the left of that where the outhouse is in this little patch of trees next to where our neighbor's house was, because they had like certain plots around the lake. There was ours that was on when you first come off that road, our neighbors, and then there was like this little on this point there was our like it's kind of like a bed and breakfast area that people come into, but it's not a really used lake, and it was more or less bought, and people were going to do with whatever. I don't know what they were going to do with that, but so that's kind of like to give you a layout, like in your mind what it is. So in between us is where she saw whatever this thing was, and what scared her is it looked so man-like, she thought that maybe it might have been like a hunter that was, using our outhouse. And it scared her because she was looking face to face. And when she realized that she was looking face to face with it, she's about 6 feet off the ground because of the porch. And she's like, why would I be looking at it face to face, especially over like the top of a car? And how it all started is that she got the glimpse of the movement coming from what it looked like peeking around the tree looking at her. And then that's when she said she could see it, and it looked like man-like. It had like I think I explained that it looked kind of caveman-like to Will in my email. And it scared her, and the dog did his business and came back up and basically did the same thing and said, let's go inside. Because what scared her also the most was after she had seen this thing, if the dog would have seen it, or if the dog would have even known that it was there, he would have let her know. But I don't know, because whatever this thing was, it must have scared him enough and scared her enough too that they both had the same notion. They went inside, and she didn't stick around very long to really see where it went or whatever. She said that she thought that it had left or turned around or whatever, because she remembers seeing it unpeak from the tree, and then I don't know what happened from there. She said that she went inside. So who knows? Maybe it left. Maybe it stuck around for a little bit. I don't know. But this happened a whole year after or before she even told me. And I came up and I asked her, I was like, I just did my own little kind of thing. I asked her, I was like, here, I'm going to put this tape measure over my head, tell me when to stop. And it stopped eventually at 8 foot tall is where I had got it to stop. And my mom said that's where the head was, about the 8 foot range. I was like, holy crap. Like, Mom, you realize what you might have saw, right? And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to think about it up here because it's going to ruin our time at the trailer or at the cabin. So, and that's a little bit of what I have, kind of. Do you guys have any questions?
What do you think, David?
I think she saw something. You said at one point she felt like there was something watching her through the window, so she put a blanket up over it.
Yeah. So there, and the Great North up there just has this, it can make you go paranoid up there, especially in the wintertime, because it's so, as Will was talking about, it gets so dark sometimes, especially up here. Heck, I've been here for about 2 years with the Army, and I've seen how dark it can get up here sometimes. It's almost the same up over there. It just gets so dark that something might not be out there, but it just, I don't know. We had those feelings up there that sometimes when we'd be sitting up there that we'd just be getting watched. And we don't know if it was just a deer or what it was. I'm not saying whether it was Bigfoot or not. I don't know. It could have been. Who knows? But after my mom had seen whatever she had seen here, it just made us lead to maybe just suspect that they were just watching us maybe from the tree line or something. But regardless, it was creepy. And that's when, yeah, like you had asked, yeah, she started putting up the blankets there, and we never left that one window I don't know what we were thinking with the other windows, but we just left that window closed because it put her at ease of mind where she didn't have to feel like she was being watched when she was being, sleeping or something.
Right.
But that's basically with that. But yeah, and I think I had sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think before we started, I was telling you, sometimes I would be laying out in that living room from the kitchen, and I would feel sometimes like I was being watched, but I don't know. I just would go back to sleep. There's nothing that I could really do about it. I was like, if it's coming in, it's coming in. There's nothing I could do about it,
Did y'all ever notice any particular time patterns, like during the night when y'all would feel like you're being watched or hear anything outside or sense anything?
We never felt. So this is because I know some people, like I've heard on the show, some people have talked about seeing, or like not seeing, well, more or less experiencing things throughout the day. And the entire time that we were up there, I never felt unsafe or like I was being watched during the daytime, if that makes sense. It was only around like the evening, like probably around like 8, 9 o'clock at night, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we'd feel it around then. Sometimes it just depended, I guess, on like the time of year, maybe, because sometimes, you know, it gets darker earlier in the winter time. So, and the entire time that we ever had that cabin, I only was up during like at least once during the winter time, and we didn't stay. We went back. We never stayed up there because the heating and stuff up there was so bad. I mean, geez, this thing had been built in 1903, and it still had the old stove, like the old, you know what I'm talking about, like the old pipe stove that they used to have. Yeah, used to have that, kind of. So that's how you'd heat it up, but we never really tried to stay up there during the winter. There's only a couple times they did, and I kind of wish that I would have remembered that. I should have asked her if she ever felt anything during the winter time. I didn't even think to ask that question, to be honest.
Do y'all have a lot of deer or anything that move through that area?
Oh, you bet there's deer up there. There's deer in, I think, every square inch of the United States of America. I mean,
there's a lot.
I was driving. Oh yeah, I was driving the Army truck and I about ran into one last week. So, yeah,
that's a good food.
There's deer up there.
That's a good food source for them. So you never know. Did y'all ever find any tracks or anything when you were doing the height assessment?
So that's because, and I wonder, and I was actually going to pick Will's brain on this too. Well, and even you too, like what, the pine needle coverage up there is just horrendous. Like, I mean, geez, me and my dad, I can't even shake a stick at how many times I had to rake them pine needles up there when I was up there with my father. But we'd always have to clear the area so that way if we wanted to go barefoot out there, we wouldn't be stepping on those sharp pine needles that we have up there. And I wonder, because we looked, I even looked, I was like, well, this is where you said you saw it, right, Mom? And she's like, yeah. And that's where it was a bigger pine tree that she had seen this thing peek around and look at her from. And I looked, I was like, well, which side of the tree did you think that it peeked from? And she said, well, I think it looked at me from coming reaching from, like going over around the left side to look at me. I said, okay. And so I went and I tried to look and see if there was any tracks by this tree, and I couldn't find anything to save my life. And it had also basically almost been a year to the day that I had looked at that, and it was about September, October time frame that I had gone up there. So who knows if there was tracks or not. And my dad even said, because she said something to my dad the next day, because she was like, well, I think we had somebody in our yard last night. You want to, do your man thing and go out there and figure it out. My dad said, yeah. So he looked out there, and I guess my dad never found any tracks, but if you don't know what you're looking for, I'm pretty sure if there would have been something, we would have saw it, is basically what I'm trying to get at. Cause we never saw nothing, which is kind of peculiar to me. I don't understand how that would work. Will, do you got anything on that?
Well, I was just thinking about that as you were mentioning it. I found a line of bear tracks up on the Klamath River one year. And the only reason I saw them was because I didn't see them when I was near them looking down. I guess because the sand, it was all one color. It was when the sun kind of shone across them, if you get what I mean. And I could see them that way. And I'm thinking, wow, I just walked right by these, and they were like an inch deep in the sand. I couldn't see them looking straight down. And, and those soft pine needles, you know how that stuff is. It's kind of spongy. Now, do you recall, was it dry or wet?
that day, like, you mean the day of the incidents or like the day, like, that I checked? Well, I mean, I would assume it had to have been wet, especially with the fog. I don't remember if she said it rained or not. I don't remember actually asking her anything about weather. To be honest, I'd have to ask her that. I don't remember.
It kind of depends on those pine needles. You know, sometimes if they're dry, they're really spongy and they can spring back. But also if they're wet, they can be hard packed. So depending on what the ground's like underneath, you might not see any kind of prints at all.
And from what I remember, the soil, so in the main part where you would come in where the cabin was, it was sandy. There was like a mixture of sandy, dirtish type material, type soil. And that's what like confused me the most. I'm like, if this thing was standing over here, I definitely should have seen the tracks. There's no way that this thing just shuffled up in here and, you know, I don't know what the heck was going on with that. That was the most peculiar part about it. And then when I started doing the measurements, there's no way that I didn't, you know, not believe that she had seen something. I'm like, you had to have seen something, Mom. There's no way that you didn't. And I was like, especially if it scared you the way you do, you don't scare easily like that. She's type that if she would have seen a guy there, she probably would have yelled at him and then ran in the house. But I don't know. She said that it was just a really strange, peculiar, you know, instance. She just, it scared her and she just didn't want nothing to do with it. So
I don't blame her.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I was like, I'd have turned tail run too, Mom, but.
If you have a lot of pine needles falling at that time of year and there are tracks, those pine needles could completely cover those tracks in a matter of hours.
Oh.
And
it really depends on the weather.
I believe it.
Not to say that this is what it did, but there have been cases where Sasquatch have been known to cover their tracks. So it could have kicked some up over the tracks that it left.
Yeah. And like I said, even though like I had mild knowledge at it, I didn't really start getting really into Bigfoot really, you know, too much until after this. I mean, Will's even said sometimes you get this kick and then it kind of takes over your life a little bit, because anything that's on my YouTube right now is anything about Bigfoot. So, because
it does do that.
I'm just trying to get these answers, and there's no way that, you know,
and
I just kind of came.
Yeah, it's tough because there's a lot of garbage out there. I mean, all these people that think they think they know the topic, and they really don't. Yeah.
Well, the guy that before I started listening to your podcast, Thomas Steenberg, he's kind of interesting. That's all I'm going to say. But just a lot of the stuff that I've heard on there, I thought is garbage too. Just I don't want to get into it too much of it. You already know. So.
Well, you know, the way I approach it is you have to look at it like other wildlife. You know, for a bear, for example, and you have to think about all the different facets of what that animal would do in its environment. And if you apply that thinking to this, I think you get a better picture.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think I mentioned in my just so the audience knows, I have no experience with hunting. I'm not a tracker. I'm nothing, you know, nothing that would be. The only thing I've ever had experience with nature is fishing and taking a fish off the hook. That's the only experience in nature that I really have. So I don't really know the whole hunting side of it. I don't know tracking and all this other stuff. And before I forget, I did mention in here, from what I'm looking at, the thing, my mom and me sometimes, yes, actually, before I forget, this wasn't at the trailer. This was, I think my mom said that this is at Potato Falls. My dad, I don't know what my dad was on that day, but something was knocking on a tree farther out in the distance. And I'm not saying that it was Bigfoot, and I'm not saying that it couldn't have been somebody being stupid out there and whacking on a tree, because People do that. But whatever it was knocking on the tree. And my mom looked at my dad. She's like, I think it's time for us to go, because they had, was it there or was it the flowage that they had? I can't remember. There was one of these instances, they had come out on a kayak. So that's the only way that they had to get off of where they were at. I can't remember if this was, no, maybe it was the one with it was the one with the kayak. Yeah, that was the one. And they were kind of on a bigger secluded island. I'll tell you guys off the air what she told them. I'm not going to say it on the air, but, the other instance, they were out somewhere, and I had actually heard this before. It sounded, and you mentioned this before, it sounded like hoot owls or something like that, or like barn owls. Mm-hmm. And it would do I'm trying to remember how to do it. It's been a while since I've been back home and heard a barn owl, but it would do that long drawn out call with like the hoot or whatever it is. And then it didn't make sense, because I'm like, it could be, but like, why is it here? You know, like, why out of all this forest it's hooting here? You know, like I don't. There's things that just happened when we were up there that just never made sense why it happened.
So,
you know.
Let me back up a little bit. You said it would make this long drawn out call and then the hooting.
Yes.
Maybe more like a chimp noise, or was it owl hooting?
Well,
or kind of a sort of in between.
Maybe kind of in between, maybe.
Okay.
Because the one instance my mom was there, she said that it didn't make sense why it would sound like that. But yeah, there were sometimes that, like, when we would go out there and you would hear something like that. And we've heard it sometimes around the cabin too, where it would do something like that. And we weren't, because we had a horned owl over there too, and we wondered maybe if it was the horned owl that was making these noises too. But I don't know, you would hear it and you'd be like, oh, well, maybe it's that owl again or something like that. And then you just go about your day. It was just one of those things that you just didn't like think of in the time. But then when you think about it, it's like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense why it was doing that, especially like, at noon. Because from what I remember at the barn owls that we have back home, they don't really start till about like midnight.
Well, plus you're not going to get that long drawn out call either with the hooting.
No. And that's what always, like, I don't know, it just never made sense to me. But what do I know? I'm just some guy that goes up there to enjoy his week of fishing, and all this crap's going on around me. So,
well, I think you're like most people. Most people aren't familiar with those kind of things. I mean, unless you know owls, and that's kind of what the point I'm making is owls don't make that long drawn out call with the hooting. They're going to hoot, and that's kind of it, really.
Yeah.
So the long drawn out call, that tells you it's something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, after my mom had said what she had told me, I was just like, oh, well, maybe we got more than what we bargained for the stinking cabin. So we were really scared for our dog, because our dog, well, we had 3 dogs, and this one dog we just recently had to put him down because he had pandas in his eyes. He'd wander. We used to call him Wandering Teddy, basically, because he'd just run around up there sometimes. We tried to keep him the best that we could, but I don't know, that dog had a mind of his own sometimes, and he'd be on a chain, and so he'd get slipped off, and we were afraid that whatever this thing would have got him, because he would slip away late at night sometimes, usually around when this stuff would happen, and he would just run around, and him being blind, I mean, nature kind of takes its course. So
yeah.
Did any of the other dogs ever act strange?
Not from what I remember I would assume maybe they did. I just never really paid attention to it too much. I can't really go off of the one dog. He was kind of crazy to begin with. He was our trouble child almost. But our black one, Dagmar, she was my mom's, like, she was always next to my mom, and I should have asked my mom if she ever noticed any, behavior changes in her. Dagmar really never came out of the cabin. She was more like a girl's girl, if that makes sense. She never really wanted to get out and get dirty, in the mud and stuff like our big boys and stuff like to do. But I'm sure if something came around, she would have let my mom know. That's a good question. There's questions that you guys are asking that I should have asked my mom. Now I wish I would have asked her.
If there's stuff that you're unfamiliar with in terms of wildlife, you always want to, at least I do. A lot of people jump to the conclusion it's Bigfoot right away. What I do is if I hear or see something I'm not familiar with, I go and try to look it up, to see what the usual suspects are, so to speak. And I'll give you an example. It would have been around 1990 or 91, I was with some friends up on the eastern side of the Olympic Peninsula. There's a place up there called the Buckhorn Wilderness. And we hiked quite a ways in there. You can't drive or anything. You have to hike this. There's one particular trail. There's actually an old B-17 crashed up there. And the parts are still laying around all over. But, so we hiked up there. It's in kind of a big bowl, the end of this valley. So we started hearing whistling. Like you'd hear, somebody putting their fingers in their mouths and whistling. And the older guy that was with us that took us up there, he says, "Oh, that's marmots." And I'd never really been around marmots, so I wasn't familiar with their noises. And then pretty soon we start seeing them by their holes, standing up, looking around, real alert. And then you'd hear this whistling off maybe a couple 100 feet away from us. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're whistling back and forth. Well, sometime later, now the guy that took us up there, he saw a Sasquatch up on the ridge and took a picture, but the picture you couldn't really tell anything because it was too far away. But he swears up and down he was, an avid hunter and all this stuff, and he saw this thing walking up on this ridge. So that's the reason we went up there. So I didn't really put two and two together until years later when I started thinking about, well, let me start taking a look at what all these different animals do. And I looked up marmots. Well, marmots don't really whistle. It's kind of a screech that they do. It doesn't sound anything like a man whistling. But this noise we heard was clearly a very human-like whistle, but there were no other people up there. So now I look back and think, I wished I would have been a little bit more knowledgeable about that, because now I think it was one or more of these creatures hunting the marmots.
I think I actually remember you saying that on one of the shows. I can't remember. I think you had actually. Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning
we discussed
this
it
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always useful to me. It's like, well, let me go look at what, the animals that are supposed to be in this location. What do they do? What kind of noises do they make? What are their behaviors? Scat, bedding, all that kind of stuff. So I have kind of an idea. If I see something that looks unusual or I'm not familiar with it, so I can be better informed. I mean, there's all this stuff on these channels, like you mentioned, but I like to go to some, wildlife experts, or I look at a lot of hunting podcasts and things like that. So I can hear these people that are out there dealing with normal animals all the time and what they have to say. And it's really useful with this topic.
You see a lot of these videos on YouTube now with all these so-called researchers out in the woods at night looking for Sasquatch, claiming they know what they're doing. And there will be an obvious animal call of an animal that is in the area, and they will mistake it as a Bigfoot. And it drives me bonkers. Whether it's an owl or a coyote, right away, that's a Sasquatch call. No, it's not. It's clearly not.
Well, we've heard a lot of things in the field where we think, well, okay, is that a real owl or whatever, or is it something else? And then you have to take the next steps further to investigate that. And then, even then, unless you have, some real concrete evidence that supports that, I would never make the contention that, that's what that is, unless we hear now we've had some recordings of, what sounds like owls. Then you hear this really weird, it doesn't just stop the hooting. Then it's like another call with it or some other weird sounds. Then we're thinking, okay, that's probably not an owl. But even then we're not saying 100% certain that it's, it's something else.
Right. If you're researching an area, know the animals in your area and know what they sound like.
Yeah, I want to know what's there so I don't have to change my drawers.
Right?
Well, geez, Louise, to tell you how secluded this place was, you come off the highway there that goes towards Mercer. I can't remember the highway, but you go up that highway, and it's 60. I think it's old 65 North. I think is what it's called. I can't remember. It goes north up towards Hurley, and you come off that road to go towards Murray's Landing, and you got a decent amount. You got like about a 10-15 minute drive into where we were at originally. So, but we would come in off there. Sometimes you'd see black bear crossing the road, and geez Louise, there was one time we saw lynx coming across the road it was a mama lynx with her babies. And my mom's like, "Oh, I don't want nothing to do with that." I was like, "Yeah, I don't blame you either. I don't want nothing to do with that either. That's a nasty animal to get, caught up with, especially if it's got, children with it too." So
that's a big cat too.
But yeah, it is. Well, trust me, we had scat approved by the house, and it was a big animal in my case, But not like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. We had lynx scat is what I'm trying to get at. We had that over by the house, not
I have to laugh. I have to laugh thinking about lynx because back, I don't know, again, this was back in the 90s. A buddy of mine and I were up south of Mount St. Helens driving around. We were just kind of, doing a look over the area up there. And, cause there's, a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that region, but, we had to stop, we both are, our bladders are really small and we drink a lot of coffee. So we had to make a nature call. And I just seen this big 2-page spread out of the Portland newspaper about scientists saying there were no more lynx in that region, that they were gone. They'd vanished. So I walk out of the car, probably 20 feet away, and I'm, doing my business, and here comes this big old lynx walking out of the tree line about 30 feet in front of me, looked at me like a house cat, like, "You're nothing." And I had my camera with me, and I took a bunch of pictures of him, just kind of walked away and looked at me like, "You follow me, you're toast." Kind of a look. But I come back to the car and I said, "Well, that big 2-page article was a farce. These guys have no idea what they're talking about."
Figures.
Yeah, I can agree with that. There was allegedly there's no moose up there, but
there is, right?
Well, yeah. So there's nothing. I have nothing against the Indian, tribes up there, and I don't know if this is true or not. But this is what we had a DNR guy tell us, and he said that if you see any moose up there, don't say anything, because if you say anything, then the Indians are going to go out and kill it right away. And I don't know if that's true. I have no idea. This could have just, I don't know. This could have just been that, whatever. I don't know what it is about it, but they said that if you ever see a moose up there, that you're not supposed to talk about it, because that's the repercussions of what's going to happen. And I don't necessarily think the Indians should go out and kill it like that. I don't know. I have no idea.
Probably not.
Probably not. But
has there been any? Do you know if there's been any reported sightings of Sasquatch in that area around the cabin? Other people?
Maybe not that exact lake, but I'm sure that there are sightings up there. I was actually trying to, throughout the week, I've been so busy, I was trying to see, not that the association that we're going to talk about really legible source in my case, but I tried looking to see if the BFRO had ever seen anything up there, and I never unfortunately got to the time to see. I would assume so, though, because up over by Oh Lord, up over by the UP, over by well, the UP's the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and they got sightings up there.
Oh,
probably not for the wazoo, but they do have sightings.
I was sent a picture, a daylight picture, a really good clear one of a really big Sasquatch in that region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from what I know of what they look like up, and well, I mean, geez, I can't remember what type you were talking about that looks caveman-like, and I don't know if it I don't know
like the Minnesota Iceman, the Type 4s, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Right, yeah.
No, and we that's might have what my mom might have saw, but
very possible.
when you have I want to say it was about a 10-15 minute sighting that she said, because she said that, I mean, for her, in order to explain what the face looked like to me,
mm-hmm.
she had to have looked at it for a good amount of time. There's no way that she didn't just look at it and look away and be like, oh yeah, okay, man. Oh, well,
right.
She explained, like, she explained that it had, like, you know, cheeks like a man, and like kind of like puffy cheeks and a nose, and I think she said it had whiskers. I want to say that she did say that it had like kind of like maybe like a beard. I can't remember if
mm-hmm.
it's not that I don't remember. I don't want to like label something and say that it had it and not, you know, and not have my information right with her, because I just remember that she stressed mainly that it looks caveman. So I would assume it had some facial hair on its face or something like that around there, maybe.
Right. Yeah, and it sounds to me that may very well be more like the Minnesota Iceman type.
Yeah. And
was she able to see what color the hair was?
Oh, yeah, no, so she never did say if she ever saw what color it was. It was a part of that time of the day where you could just make out basically that there was the silhouette, and then she just saw the face. That's all she really saw. She was never able to really distinguish color, because that's one of the questions I asked her. I was like, do you remember what kind of color it was? And she said she's like, for what time it was, maybe black. I don't know. I was like, well, possibly, but from what I know up there, usually the color spans between, I think, like a gray or like a brown, kind of like down south. Mm-hmm. And I mean, geez, the deer up there, from where I live down in Illinois, the deer are kind of grayish brown looking, and the deer up there, you can spot them out of the field like no one's business. They're just like a beaming gray or orange almost. So I don't know if it's because of the iron deposits that they have up there sometimes with the minerals or what it is, but it possibly, well, it could be because of maybe like the iron in the soil. Because if you look at the sand can be also orange. So I don't know if that might have anything to do with it. Maybe, who knows? And I'm not a biologist. I don't know if that's possibly what's to do with it, but just from what I know with the deer down where I'm at and the deer up there, there's obviously something rich in the environment to make the fur like that, possibly as bright as it is. So I wonder if that's what the orange ones have going on, if they're eating something that makes the color orange or something like that.
I've got a friend that's a biologist. I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, that's always kind of rattled my brain. I've always wanted to know if maybe that's what's going on or what's going on up there. But I do know that there's some pretty big ones, like maybe bulkier ones, and then I've also heard that they look really scrawny and sickly sometimes, or not really sickly, but just, you know, not as full as what you would know as a normal Sasquatch, like a patty or something like that.
That's actually a different variation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't want nothing to do with either one of them. They can stay in the forest. I might be in the Army, but that is not on my payroll. So.
not in your sphere of influence.
Heck no. Man alive.
Did she notice that there was any eye shine by chance when she saw it?
No.
Well, you'd have to find out if there was any light there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our front porch light was on, and I don't know if the eye shine would have really came through with the mist fog, whatever how she explained it would have come through maybe like that. I don't know. I've seen animals shine before. I kind of know what you're talking about, and I know a lot of that has to do with some of this thing, but she never, from what I remember, saw eye shine. No, I don't think so, no.
Okay. Yeah, she probably would have mentioned it if she'd seen it.
Oh, yeah, because I think what she was more afraid of was that there was some guy using her outhouse or something like that, which at the time she was scared of, but then she's like, well, I would have been okay with them using it because I know how it is up there. And I mean, you know, you're out in the woods, you need a bathroom. So.
Was it behind the outhouse or beside it?
No. So it was more, so when you look at the outhouse and you come out of the outhouse, it was more to the right of the outhouse, way further up, kind of, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, Dave, but
yeah.
It was more close to where the car was parked. It was that same gray SUV that we had. And, it was kind of, and I was trying to be able to get you guys pictures of where it was that she saw it, because we've taken tons of pictures of that property. And, I wasn't able to, unfortunately, find, you know, that exact area, but basically, kind of to explain this area better is there's like this little, like in the back area that kind of split the property, there's like a clothesline that's back there. And where she had seen this thing, there's like a little carved out area where you could put another car if you wanted to. And she had seen it on the right side of that, where that tree line starts, and it's that first tree that's right off that corner that she saw it. And that actually scared me, because now I'm thinking about it, now you kind of circled me back to it. It was really close to the house. It was super close to the house. I was like, man alive, if that thing wanted my mother, it could have got her.
Yeah, it's not far
because
at all.
it was about 10, 15 feet from the house. It was pretty close. Now that I think about it. Whew,
could do that steps.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, just hearing how fast these things, you know, are, I think it was Will, I can't remember who it was. Somebody was talking about that. I was listening to a podcast where this guy was walking on a trail or something, and one of these things goes zooming by him and just kind of played almost like tag with them, kind of, in a way. Just kind of ran up in front of him and waited for him to get to a certain spot, and then just kind of ran again. I was like, geez Louise, if that thing can do that, what could it do in 15 feet, you know?
Well, actually, that's a mock charge. That's a serious warning.
Mm.
You know,
well, I mean, I think it was you, Will, that, yeah, it was you, because I remember this, you said that that's kind of I think that's what you said, it was kind of creepy, because this thing was like it was toying with them almost, kind of in that sense. I can't remember where it was that I heard either you or somebody say that off of. I can't really remember.
There was a guy interviewed. Yeah, there was a guy interviewed from Stevenson, Washington, and just across the Columbia River into northern Oregon, he and a buddy encountered one over there. And the buddy thought it was a bear when they saw it briefly run through a clearing. Didn't get a great look at it. It was just a big dark shape. So his buddy ran to the car, said, I'm not having any part of a bear. And this other guy, Hugh, he stood his ground. He wanted to see, a deer popped out. This thing had been screaming coming up from the river up on this ridge to where they were. And after his buddy Jeff ran to the car, Hugh stood his ground, and then shortly after these series of screams, and they saw this dark shape run through the clearing out ahead of them, this deer popped out of the tree line, looking, completely frightened, and it ran over by Hugh. He said, I could have reached out and touched it. And it was scared. It acted like he wasn't there. Then the creature apparently bellowed once again. Deer ran off. Then it come out of the tree line. Saw Hugh and made a dead run for him. And he says, I guess I just was in shock. I just stood there. And the creature ran up to about 15 feet in front of him. He was on kind of a slope, and the creature was below him. And he said, we just kind of stared at each other for a few moments. He said, then it looked bored, turned to its right, and walked off into the trees. But that's a typical higher primate behavior. You know, if they're going to challenge you, they're going to charge you.
No, that's the typical changing moment is what that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just glad that it didn't, because there ain't nothing that my dad's 9mm service weapon would have been able to do to keep that thing from hurting my mother. So
nope, exactly. Far too small a caliber.
Yeah. I mean, my dad might act like John Wayne, and I love my dad to death, but John Wayne ain't gonna fix this situation.
Right.
Man. So I had to get a drink of water. My throat was getting dry.
Oh, no problem. I totally understand.
But yeah, no, that's from, I don't really know there's not too much that I have.
Do y'all still go up there, Jarrett? Any?
Oh, actually this is what's part of the thing. Well, there was some financial issues that was going on in the family. Well, not really fine. I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to, because I'm sure my mom's gonna. There was things that was going on, and my dad and mom were more. They wanted to get something. So what brought us up there, more or less, I'm just gonna tell us what. My mom used to go up there with my great grandpa, and my great grandpa, he was a guy, you know. He was the guy he wanted to be like. Everyone has that great grandpa that was John Wayne or something like that, and he was the John Wayne of our family. And he used to take like all the kids and stuff, and all of our family members. He would take them up to a lake off of Monaco, Wisconsin. Madeline Lake is what it's called, and that's where my mom grew up. And my mom wanted to give us, me and my brother, she wanted to give us the summers that she had when she was younger, and that's what kind of led us into this place. And my grandmother gave us the money because it was her inheritance that she was giving us, so that way she could enjoy it with us while she's still alive. She's still alive. She's not dead, but while she was still alive, so she could enjoy it with us. Well, one thing led to another. We had these things happen and stuff. This kind of is a little bit of what kind of stirred us away from this place. We didn't want to have to deal with these things coming into our property, and scaring us every night, peeking in our window. I'm sure they probably did while we were sleeping. I just never knew, and I know shortly after we had sold it and bought our newer property that somebody had bought it and sold it, and my mom had mentioned this to them, and of course they looked at her like she was a nut. So, and unfortunate, let them experience it if they want to think my mom's a nut. My mom's a really sweet person, and she wouldn't wish anything like this on anybody, anybody's whatever. And apparently these people had younger children with them, so that's why she said something, because she didn't want, nothing happened to the kids. So,
right.
But we don't go to that property really anymore. If we do, we only go up to the flowage that's off of Murray's Landing there to really just kind of go do our recreation stuff. We don't really look to the right when we go by where the little turnoff is, because it just has kind of those sour memories there that kind of ruined, it really didn't ruin our vacation, but it just made you, being scared of something, and wanting something like that isn't really, it's not a good mixture, if that makes sense, I guess. It wasn't really that it was sour. It's just sometimes when you get scared of things, you just don't really want to think about them no more. And I mean, geez, my mom was kind of, I mean, for a little bit, she was petrified of it. And she was, I think, more scared that we would have called her a nut, really, because she didn't have anybody else to really outlet this to. And she noticed me watching. This is how really more or less how it started, how she brought this up to me. And I looked at her, I said, Jesus, Mom, why didn't you tell me, when it happened? Like, why wouldn't you tell me? She's like, because I thought you would have thought I was crazy. She's like, well, your dad's a skeptic, and your dad didn't really believe me, and he thought that it was just a man out there. He's like, I can only imagine, the rest of the family ridiculing me. I'm like, I wouldn't have ridiculed you. I just wanted to, this is kind of like my start into it, Maybe I want to, start this as a report, Mom, or something like that. And she just, she just didn't, she just thought it was crazy. So.
Understandable.
But, yeah, and that's kind of a little bit of what led into us getting rid of it. So, sorry, I did a little rant there, but.
Oh, you're fine. Cuz, you got anything? I think I'm good.
I don't. You got any questions for us, Jarrett?
Maybe off the air. Not that I can think of right now, no.
All right, folks. Well, listen, thanks for sitting in, and join us next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.